Thank you again.
See you later.
Go ahead, chief.
Go ahead.
I want you to lead the way.
No.
So with that said, I will move that we appoint Robert Bouchard as our part-time conservation agent for the town of Lakeville to
You ready?
I'm ready. I'll follow
appointment to
you.
be effective Monday, February 25th, 2019.
I'll second that.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor? Aye. Agenda item number 3, discuss response to the CCC regarding Nature's Remedy. We received this letter. And they want us to sign off on some of the stuff that hasn't happened yet. Nate had provided some information relative to that, I think. So what I would suggest is that maybe we move to authorize Rita to sign this contingent upon completion of the necessary aspects of what need to happen for this to be in, for Nature's Remedy to be in compliance. Because then it's just contingent upon them to get through that stuff.
Aaron, if I may, can I just add to, I had sent out an email relative to my initial interpretation of that. In hindsight, upon further reading, I think that what they're asking for is does the zoning allow adult use at this time, regardless of the special permit? I think that I would feel comfortable, signing that at this time. It's a chicken or the egg type of scenario. The provisional license requires that you have a special permit, and then a special permit requires that you have a provisional license. It makes zero sense. So, we have to issue a special permit, have it conditioned upon getting a provisional license and all other aspects of the state and local regulations.
Yep.
I'm fine with it as written.
Okay. Did you have a question? You look like you had.
No, I think like Nate and I kind of had some conversations on this too, just as to what exactly it means. But I think overall, what I would suggest in the conversations I've had with Nate is really kind of having a meeting to look at what we're doing for marijuana permitting, because we do end up in a chicken and egg situation in a lot of these instances because this
Egg.
egg, did I say eggs?
No, I'm just saying,
Oh.
I'm answering the question.
Oh.
The egg came first.
It had to.
So the issue is we end up with like a circular reference between, if we have a provisional license but it needs the special permit, and then the state needs to know that everything's in compliance, and it's just not streamlined, and we didn't anticipate a lot of this because we have different boards providing medical marijuana, site plan review and oversight and the issuance of the special permit, which is the ZBA versus the planning board, and I think we really need to kind of bring those groups together to sit down and talk about what the best practices should be.
But one of the things one of the things I want to talk about with this board, okay, if my days are numbered here, is the idea of two things. Putting forward a change to the zoning bylaw, and Nate and I talked about this, it would change the special permit granting authority from the planning board to the ZBA. All right, conversation, just a conversation. The second piece of that is putting forward a bylaw at the Junetown meeting that limits the amount of adult use recreational marijuana places.
So
Those are two things that I want to talk about at a subsequent meeting. I do not want to talk about them now. I'm just simply saying it for the sake of, because
But to
we're on the topic.
expand on that, I think we need to expand on that in a number of different ways.
All right, well, yeah.
I think having a meeting on what are we doing about marijuana.
That's separate, and that's a totally great idea.
Well, no, but it's everything. Because we have a lot of issues. If we're looking at changing zoning bylaws, even on the medical side, now what happened when the DPH went under the control of the Cannabis Control Commission, they took the regulations under that CMR and just lifted them and put them in a new CMR. So any references we might have, we need to make sure that those references in the zoning bylaws are pointing to the right place, or that the state actually then said, if it's not here, it's not just doesn't exist anymore, and it just says deleted.
Right.
Versus, where it's actually been moved, because we knew that we did point to the CMR because we had that conversation about if it's a non-profit organization, did we specify that it had to be a non-profit, or were we pointing to the definition under the medical like CMR that defined what the entity type was, and we found out we pointed to the CMR. So when that changed, that was, how our regulations are written. So we need to make sure that we're updating those to be in compliance with what they are now.
Sure. And honestly, I would hope the town council will be doing that.
Well, I want to make sure we reach out to town council to say, look, these are some issues we have with our existing zoning with medical marijuana, but then I want to have the conversation about the fact that if we have two different avenues that people can go down, and how many are really going to go down the avenue of medical right now? I mean, some still might, but it's very unlikely that we'll have any more real medical applicants coming in front of us, in my opinion. We're going to have more adult use applicants coming in front of us. So I want to make sure that if we have two different avenues on those two different things that are really kind of the same, that we're looking at those and saying, what are the best practices? And having that conversation about how should this flow through the system? And we need to get input, I think, from those other boards in terms of what does that look like?
Sure.
So I think it's a bigger conversation. I'd like to have a marijuana meeting specifically, and have those conversations. And I think if we outline the topics that we want town council to weigh in on ahead of time so that they give us what they've been doing with other communities, I want to be proactive and not, reactive, but we're running out of time anyways for a zoning change.
That's why I'm bringing it up. So if you want to do a meeting, I think it's a great idea. We really should get that scheduled and do it if the goal is to put forward any substantive changes to zoning for June, because it has to happen now. We're having a ZBRAC meeting. We can talk about this stuff, from a ZBRAC perspective, which kind of gives a little bit of insight from those different boards. But I agree, having everybody in the room is the best way to approach it. But again, it may be that ultimately we can't get it there. I don't know. I have no expectations other than I wanted to bring it up because, again, my days are numbered, and that's something I'd like to see get resolved, for lack of a better word, prior to
I think
sailing off into the sunset.
Whether we propose a bylaw that limits the number of adult use is certainly going to be, one of those questions that I'd want to get input on. I know John has said, specifically,
that's why
with John's rationale behind it, for wanting to have as much revenue coming in from that perspective.
Right, and that may be ultimately what ends up
I want
happening.
to make sure that you have the right
Right, but we should put that on a future agenda.
Yep.
Absolutely.
I'm happy to talk about it tonight.
No, yeah.
But
So with that said, let's just reel this back in. When we're talking about the Cannabis Control Commission letter, which I made a motion that we give Rita the authority to sign it. I'm going to amend that motion to just give Rita the authority to sign it with the understanding that Nate had provided some clarity on what they're asking for.
It's 2 letters.
I'll second that, and I want discussion.
Okay.
I want discussion.
Yep.
So I'll second that. I think that we read into some of this stuff way too much. And the simple question here is, are they in compliance with municipal bylaws? The answer to that is yes. If you want to go through the whole process, they're in compliance with local bylaws.
Yep.
End of the story.
Yep.
We don't need to go any further than a yes or a no. And so I think that we read into these documents way too much. And as far as, we could have the general meeting, as far as trying to make everything that we do in compliance with the Cannabis Commission, because they're such a moving target. It's really the intent. You have zoning for industrial, and that's what we've chosen.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's where we allow it. Limiting them and stuff, we should have that meeting.
Yeah.
And
have those conversations, absolutely.
All right, any further
Right.
discussion specific to the motion?
no.
Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
All right.
4 eyes.
Do we have any new business? Do we have any old business? Do we have any other business? All right.
A business?
I move that we adjourn.
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned.